Today we will be discussing about natural resources of the Philippines. And without further ado, let's start ahead with the video. What do you think are the essential things for a normal Filipino or typical Filipino to survive or to live every single day? What does he or she need every single day to survive as a Filipino here in the Philippines? Of course, we're gonna go first with the most basic thing. We have food and foods that are most readily available here in the Philippines. Foods that are grown locally and foods that are easily accessible here in the Philippines. Such as, of course, we have corn, we have grains, we have rice. Filipinos really love rice. Also, as you people who are watching who are really healthy also are fond of vegetables and also of corn. And typical Filipinos really also love pork. And due to we have a lot of coastlines here in the Philippines, we are next to seas. We are also fond of having lots of marine resources or lots of fish in the typical Filipino diet. Okay, not only food, but of course, in the modern era, Filipinos, or as every single person in the entire world would be, needs electronic devices. Now, these electronic devices, most of them are actually imported from other countries, from USA, from China, from Korea, and for a typical Filipino, they really do need lot standard electronic devices. And of course, for daily necessities, a typical Filipino would also need electricity and power, would also need oil. Indirectly, if you would be commuting, you are using public transport every single day, also, you need to use paper, especially if you're a student. And of course, you need tools, daily tools, scissors, knives, hammers, or any kind of tool that will help you go through the day. Now, everything that we have discussed from for the past few seconds, they are they all come from natural resources. Yes. Now, from food to electricity to oil to paper to tools and even to electronic devices, they all come from one source, or they all are called natural resources. Now, you might be asking, what are natural resources? Now, that's a good question there, young child. This is natural resources. They are materials created in nature, so they come from one source. They come from nature. They are not man-made, uh, and they are used and are usable by humans. Okay, because not everything in nature can be used by humans. We call them natural resources if they are materials from nature. Okay, and then they have a purpose, or they can be used by us humans. Another definition for natural resources is that it is what people can use which comes from the natural environment, or what a very similar definition to the previous definition. The main definition here is that it should come from nature and it can be used by us humans. You could use it for food, you could use it for electricity, you could use it for electronic devices. Okay? Natural resources include both natural substances such as soil and water, and of course also energy supplies such as coal and gas that serve to satisfy the human needs, the daily human needs. Okay? As what we have discussed, food, from the chicken, from the coke, from the rice, they come from natural resources. Philippines also is very rich in its vegetable diet or natural resources. Also, our palayans, our rice fields, and our fertile soil, our plain fields, they are also very important natural resources for us. Also, electronic devices are also very very much needed here in the Philippine society. These also come from natural resources such as minerals and metals, copper, zinc, and non-metallic elements too. And every single day, yeah, there's cars moving around, cars come from metals, and every single day also cars in the traffic, they also use lots of oil, lots of gas, that in order to drive them and transport the people that they are in. Also, electricity and power. Here in the Philippines, we have hydroelectric power and coal-fired power plants that provide electricity for us. Also, this here, I mean, those were most of the natural resources that we all need in our daily lives, not also as Filipinos. Now, here in the Philippines, we specifically are also abundant in natural resources. Philippines is really, really rich in a lot of resources now. Some of these resources can also be found in other countries, but some of these resources are very, very specific to the Philippines. Sometimes we import from other countries, and sometimes we export our own resources to other countries. So let's go first with our first natural resource here in the Philippines. And this one is the most obvious one. One of the greatest natural resources here in the Philippines is our fertile soil. Philippines, having to be a tropical country, makes it very, very ideal for farmers and for crops and for grains to grow. Not only with our fertile soil, but also with our climate, which is very, very ideal and which really just benefits a lot of the agricultural sector. This here is, of course, one of the most famous sites in the Philippines, the Banawe Rice Terraces, where lots of grains, lots of rice plants are being grown here. Now, these are the 6 major crops that come from the Philippines. Rice, of course, you've got corn, sugarcane, coconut, abaca. Abaca is a tree used for fabric, and of course tobacco leaves. And this here is a map of the distribution, and this pie chart signifies how much of the agriculture sector, how much of these crops are grown. It says here 34.7% is rice, 27% is corn, and coconut is 21%, and all the rest are here. Now, last year, the the agricultural sector in its fourth quarter increased by 1.5 and an average of 1.5 for the entire year. So not as big as it should be, but Philippines really also relies on its agricultural sector for its economic growth. So, number one natural resource of the Philippines is its fertile soil, benefiting from its climate, tropical climate. Number two, the Philippines is also very, very much rich with minerals. Minerals such as metals and also non-metals. So let's go and discover what are the minerals rich here in the Philippines. Here are them over at the left-hand side of your screen. We have copper, gold, chromite, nickel, iron, cobalt, and manganese. All are very abundant here in the Philippines. Now, these stars, from the source that I got, these are all of the big mines that the Philippines has. And also potential area deposits over here from the source that I got them from. And also the distribution, of those minerals where they can be found. As what you can notice, there are lots of gold, lots of magnetite, lots of chromites scattered here all around. The number one mineral that the Philippines produces or exports, or the number one natural resource that is very, very rich in the Philippines, is nickel. Now, according to the latest sites, Philippines is the number 2 exporter of nickel, just next to Indonesia. So that there was our second natural resource that is very rich in the Philippines, and that is the minerals: copper, gold, chromite, nickel, iron, cobalt, and manganese. And also include there gold, with nickel as the number 1 mineral here in the Philippines. So first we had fertile soil, second we had minerals, and third we have Guess what this is? Yes, it is coal. Now, you might be wondering, so what is coal? It is not the what I am referring to as coal is not the coal that comes from wood. Okay? Now, because that is charcoal, that is not what we're referring here. Coal, this is the coal that I mean. It is a hard rock. It is a type of rock which can be burned as solid fuel, and it is mostly carbon, but also contains hydrogen, sulfur, oxygen, and nitrogen. It is a sedimentary rock from peat by the pressure of rocks laid down layer on top. Now, this coal is not made out of wood. This coal is made out of dead plants and animals that have decayed for millions of years. They have been decompressed and compressed by pressure with layers and layers of rocks and soil on top of them, making them into this hard rock which can be burned as fossil fuel. Here in the Philippines, we have a very famous coal mine, which is the Semirara Mining Island over in Antique, and it is the largest coal mine in the Philippines according to the Department of Energy. These here are the coal mines, the coal-fired thermal plants of the Philippines. This here is where the Semirara coal-fired power plant is located. You can see that they are scattered all around Luzon and Visayas. Now, you might be asking, how much of the energy output of the Philippines, or how much of the electricity of the Philippines is coming from coal? Actually, coal is the number one producer of energy here in the Philippines. Okay, it is not hydroelectric. Please refer to this pie graph over here at the right hand side. Coal contributes about 34.63%, oil based is 16.88%, natural gas is 16.02%, hydrothermal is at about 16.89%, and geothermal 8.94%, and other renewable resources are over here. Okay, but this year was as of 2017. Let's look at a graph by 2018. You can see that coal just rose from 34.63 to 39.2 in its percentage share of how much energy of the Philippines, how much of the electricity that comes from the Philippines comes from coal. So, if you were to be asked again, where is most of the power or the electricity of the Philippines comes from? It comes from coal, a fossil fuel that is burned in coal-fired power plants and produces electricity, and also as a consequence produces lots of greenhouse gases, and that we will discuss in a few more videos. Now, 14.5% of this is also another fossil fuel called natural gas. Now, the Philippines is also very, very rich with natural gases. So, sir, what are natural gases? These are also fossil fuels, right? They are very similar to coal. They're very, very similar to oil. Excuse me. It is also a naturally occurring hydrocarbon gas mixture consisting primarily of methane. Now, methane, this is what burns. Methane is a highly volatile, highly combustible gas that is usually one of the main components of natural gas, but also is composed of higher alkanes, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, hydrogen sulfide, or helium. Now, how does these fossil fuels become created? How do these fossil fuels form? They come from marine animals, right? 300 to 400 million years ago. Then when they're dead, over millions of years, they were buried deep over sand and silt, and as what I've said ago, layers and layers and layers of soil and sand. And after a few hundred million years, they get pressurized, they get decomposed, and then they become oil, natural gas, and coal. Alright, so that's how these fossil fuels are being created. This here is also one of the Philippines' natural gas um, natural gas power plants, natural gas ones that mines natural gases. This here is the Malampaya gas field over here. Okay, this is how that looks like right now. It's located over here, and that there was our next natural resources. We had coal. I mean, wherein we get most of the energy output that comes from the Philippines. And also another fraction of the energy from the Philippines comes from natural gases that also comes from the Malampaya gas fields. Our next natural resource from the Philippines, we're going to be shifting from the energy of the Philippines to the flora and fauna of the Philippines. By flora and fauna, what do I mean? Flora would mean to the wonderful plants and the wonderful flowers, or flora, that is very unique and that is very diverse here in the Philippines. Okay, I'm not going to be discussing every single flora in the Philippines, but it's a good thing to take note that the flora in the Philippines is very diverse and is very, very stunning to the eyes. Okay? One of the very famous floras here in the Philippines are orchids. So what is an orchid? It's a flowering plant that exhibits a unique reproductive strategy. By unique reproductive strategy, what does this mean? It means that all orchids both have the male and the female reproductive structures fused into a singular structure. That's what makes these orchids very exotic, rare, and also very extremely difficult to grow. Now, if you're a Filipino, most of your female grandparents or most of your mothers would have wanted to really have an orchid, because again, these are also really exotic and really rare, but they are very, very extremely difficult to grow. Okay? So this here is one of the most famous flora found in the Philippines, and one of the most famous is in our next slide. It's called the Rafflesia. Now, most probably you've heard about this. This here is not a monster. This here is an actual flora that is native here in the Philippines and some other parts of Southeast Asia too. Its scientific name is the Rafflesia pancoana, and it is mainly found in the high altitude places in the Philippines. Now, something unique about the Rafflesia is that it is a really big flowery plant, and it smells, according to my source, it smells like a putrefying rat, and that really does not smell well. Okay, and those were the flora of the Philippines. We have orchids, which are very famous and very rare, and we also have a very famous Rafflesia. Next, let's go to the fauna, or to the animals, or to the animals that are very native to the Philippines. Now, I'll not be discussing every single fauna, but I'll be discussing the most famous ones and the ones that are also very much endangered. Okay? Now, everybody knows here the top left corner. This here is, of course, a tarsier, the smallest primate in the entire world, native to Bohol. We also have the Philippine crocodile here. We also have the mouse deer, very, very small deers that are almost at the same size of mouse. Also, native fauna here in the Philippines is also the water buffalo, or locally known as the carabao. Something that's very unique about the carabao is that farmers have been using them for decades to help them in their farms, in plowing the fields, because the water buffalo is one of the most useful animals, one of the useful fauna here in the Philippines. Also, Philippines is an agricultural country, and one of the most majestic creatures ever in the Philippines is the Philippine eagle, one of the endangered species here, also in the Philippines, and very exotic and very unique to have here in the Philippines. Um, what's unique about the Philippine eagle is that from what was taught to me and what I know is that they only give birth to just one one eagle for their entire lifetime. And then they're also being poached by hunters for decades right now. So there's a lot of protection going on to the Philippine eagle and also to the tarsiers, to the mouse deer, and also to the Philippine crocodile. Other notable faunas are here. Okay, this here is a tamaraw, or usually a typically smaller than typical oxen. We also have the Philippine fruit bats. Now these bats um, are also very unique to the Philippines. These bats typically eat fruits. They don't suck out your blood. Okay, these bats eat fruits in the Philippines. We also have the Philippine turtle, or locally known as the pawikan. Okay, and this here is a dugong, or internationally known as a manatee. One of the many other names of the dugong is also a sea cow, and these are all native here in the Philippines. All of the fauna, the Philippine eagle, the tarsier, the Philippine crocodile, the mouse deer, the water buffalo or the carabao. We have the tamaraw, we have the Philippine fruit bat, we have the dugong, and we also have the pawikan. Okay? And down to our last natural resource here in the Philippines, we have, of course, our marine life. Now, Philippines is one of the many nations that is an archipelago, and is also one of the many nations that has the longest coastlines, as what we have discussed in the previous video. Now, because of that, lots of communities here in the Philippines are fisher folk and are fishermen and depend on the food that comes from the sea and depend also on fishes. So that's why marine life is a very abundant natural resource here in the Philippines. So first of all, let's discuss about a very famous coral reef all around the world known as the Tubataha Reef. Okay, the Tubataha Reef is one of the greatest coral reefs, one of the biggest coral reefs ever in the entire world. But there was also some speculation a few years before it was going to be destroyed because it was going to be rehabilitated. It was going to be changed into something better. But right now it's safe. Tubataha Reef is over here at near Palawan. It is one of the greatest coral reefs and is home to lots and lots of diverse coral reefs and fishes all around the Philippines and all around this area over here. Now, some 800,000 Filipinos as of 2017, according to my source, with more than 7,100 islands, depend on the marine life of the Filipinos. And even over 1 million Filipinos are engaged in marine fishing. Of these, an estimated 800,000 are small-scale fishermen using traditional low-cost techniques, just like these bangka that they're using, such as these fish nets that they're using, and from small boats and fish corrals. Again, as what I have said, Philippines has one of the longest coastlines and is home to lots and lots of fishermen. And according to this source, about 800,000 to over 1 million Filipino do depend on marine life and do depend on the sea for food. And of course, every single Filipino does also cherish the marine life and do also cherish the food, the kind of fish, the tuna that they eat and are usually a lot cheaper compared to other countries. The Philippines is also very home and very uniquely abundant with these very delicious fish. We have the milkfish over here, or locally known as the bangus, very abundant, currently being farmed here in the Philippines. There's abundance of milkfish here. We have anchovies. Okay, anchovies internationally known or locally known as the bulinaw, and in Tagalog the dilis. very very abundant, very very famous in a lot of dishes here in the Philippines. We also have here the mackerel, or locally known as the galunggong. Lots of people also use this in their dishes and eat lots of this. And also next to the bangus, we also have tilapia, which is also very very famous, usually sautéed and eaten for breakfast, the tilapia. And all of these fishes are very very abundant and also very very not only unique but also very very famous here in the Philippines. And that there was the marine life of the Philippines. And those were all of the natural resources of the Philippines. Okay. Okay, let us do a quick review of what we have had in this video. First, we discussed about natural resources and what they are. We discussed that natural resources come from nature and that they are called resources because humans are using them, and then they are very much used and are very very the ones that contribute to the productivity of of every single person here on earth. We've also discussed that natural resources are also very very much abundant here in the Philippines, and that Philippines is unique to a number of natural resources such as fertile soil, wherein we also discussed that it is also because of the tropical climate and the situation and where the Philippines is located that contributes to having natural soil, making it have lots of crops and grains and vegetables for the typical Filipino diet. We've also discussed that Philippines is very much rich in minerals. The number two, I'd rather say, producer of nickel and exporter of nickel to the entire world. Also, with electricity, Philippines is also very rich in coal. Okay, wherein we also have coal-fired power plants contributing to almost 40% of the energy here in the Philippines, and a fraction of the energy also comes from natural gases that we also mine, we also get from the Malampaya gas fields. Also, the Philippines is very much rich with lots of flora, lots of flowers such as orchids and the very rare Rafflesia. The Philippines is also home to a number of fauna, and some of them are actually also endangered but are taken care of well by the Philippine government. And finally, Philippines, wherein a lot of Filipinos also depend upon, is the very abundant marine life here in the Philippines. And that there is my video about the natural resources of the Philippines. Stay tuned and continue to be here. Stay tuned to my channel and continue to learn more and more about Philippine Earth Science.